You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 278. We are back with another listener question and feedback show, and we've been collecting your questions and feedback for quite some time over the Cantina Cast hotline. We've been getting stuff in email, social media, and a cost from our Discord server. That was my Mike Rondo impression.
Very nice.
Yeah, thank you. And joining me tonight is the man with all the answers, and especially those involving craft beers. Please welcome to the show, Jonesy. Jonesy, welcome back.
Appreciate it, man. This is going to be fun. These are always some of my favorite episodes.
Yeah, a cost.
Of course.
All right, well, let's get into it because we've got a ton of questions that we need to sift through. So, but we've got some news, and sorry, we're going to start kind of, I wouldn't say on a low note, but just, unfortunately, we had the passing of Peter Mayhew earlier this week, died at the age of 74, and that was kind of surprising. I mean, I guess all of them are really surprising. I think
Right.
we saw the writing on the wall, too. I mean, I think at Celebration, I forget, was he the one that can't?
Yeah, he was ill one day, and then I think ended up showing up. But yeah, it is super sad. I mean, these things happen, I guess. But he was such a kind-hearted person, and you just you hate it when the good ones go, right? And so he's going to be sorely missed. There was a huge outpouring of support for the family and reminiscing and enjoying the things that he gave us, and we just can't thank him enough. And looking forward to. I think Mike is wanting to do a bit of a tribute type of show here soon, and looking forward to us getting together and doing that and kind of reminiscing about some of our favorite Chewbacca and Peter Mayhew moments in particular.
Yeah, and there's quite a bit of them. Even just today, there's an astronaut by the name of Nick Hague who is on the space station right now, and he posted a tribute on Twitter live from the space station up there. I don't know what the reception's like there, but it's a picture of Peter Mayhew. It's just kind of a headshot that they have floating. They've got him centered right on the Earth. I don't know if you've had a chance to see this, but it's kind of cool. It says,
cool.
honoring Peter Mayhew, also known as Chewbacca up here. Thank you, Peter, for inspiring generations of explorers. So, yeah. And like Jonesy said, we definitely want to do a kind of a tribute show here. So do the right thing and do it without having to rush to it. It just kind of feels weird that we, stuck this in on what's probably going to be a more upbeat kind of show, but at the same time, I mean, we, obviously didn't plan for any of this stuff. So we don't want to dismiss it, and we want to give it the attention that it's fairly due. So we will come back and do something special there for Mr. Mayhew and Chewbacca. So
Looking forward to it. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, let's talk about this suite from Star Wars Galaxy, which was released. And this is an audio track. I guess this is going to be playing everywhere at the theme park. I had a chance to listen to it.
What did you think?
Okay. So there was a little bit of conversation going back and forth on Discord, and I wasn't involved in it. I just saw it, and I didn't get a chance to contribute or even respond or give any comments on it. But it didn't. Well. I forget who it was. Someone said it sounded like Star Trek, and I don't think it didn't, to me, it didn't feel like Star Trek. It actually felt like a Star Wars piece to me, and I honestly did not even see who composed this. I know who composed it now, but I did not see who composed it prior to listening to it. And so I actually went in thinking, okay, they're going to really be trying to, hone in on that John Williams sound. And then I started listening to it, and I was like, oh, yeah, well, this actually sounds something like John Williams would do. There's a lot of horns. It sounded a little bit more, I guess, grandioso. It sounded like a kind of a rebellion type or resistance type track.
Right.
But it didn't bother me. It was fine. It didn't feel out of place, I guess. And that's just kind of my impressions.
Yeah, it didn't have the... so some people are basically saying they don't think it really feels like Star Wars. Mm-hmm. And a couple of responses to that. I kind of get that criticism. It is not like John Williams' other work that we have with the movies. But I also have to... I look at... Of course, I go to Disney somewhat frequently, right? And when I think about the music I hear and the ambiance around the park, this fits perfectly with what the parks feel and sound like, and kind of what you hear as you walk around the park.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like I can, when I said earlier, the very first thing I said is that something you would just be hearing playing while you're doing other stuff, where it doesn't get in the way, but it's not like the title track or the main theme from Star Wars. I don't think we were expecting that, right?
Right. Yeah. And I thought we'd get a little of the leitmotif in there, but we really didn't. When you get about halfway through it into that third minute or so, you do have a little bit more of what we expect to hear from Star Wars. A little more, like you said, a little more horns, a little more of the dissonant type of sounds, which is always a trademark John Williams type of deal. And it starts to feel a little more like that. But overall, yeah, this is really supposed to be walk around type of music, not necessarily things that you're super excited and jumping around about. And I know that might be a little disappointing, and it's not making excuses. It's just, this is the environment that you have when you go to the parks, and it's just kind of what you expect. It's just there in the background. Feels good. I thought it captured what I think the environment will feel like if you're walking around and seeing things. I think it did capture that pretty well, and I could visualize the experience, again, partially because I've got a lot of experience with that, but yeah, I could kind of visualize it. So I think it's going to work. I think it's going to be pretty good. Yeah. And it's available everywhere, so you can go find this on your favorite music subscription or whatever of choice. I think we were listening to it on Apple Music.
Yeah, that's where I picked it up myself. So cool. Well, it sounds great. I think it's fine especially for a theme park, not a movie. And just not to belabor the point.
It's like 5 minutes long or something. Well, something crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's a little longer, but not to belabor the point. But when you're writing and composing music for a movie, you're generally given an idea of what you're trying to capture, right? They kind of give the composers some scenes, or they tell them, here's what's happening in here. Here's what I want you to go for. Think about this emotion, that kind of thing. With a theme park, you're probably not getting all that, right? You're more playing to atmospheres and environments and feels and stuff like that, instead of just very specific things that they're trying to capture. So
that's a great point. Yeah, that's a great point, because this is supposed to be an outpost. So kind of like a spaceport type of thing. And
right.
When you start viewing it from that lens, I think that's a great point, Albert.
Yeah. And then the last thing we've got to cover is we finally got the listing of Journey to the Rise of Skywalker books and comics and source books and everything else. So this was announced on May 4th. We had some feelers, I think, early Saturday morning. There was a lot of rumblings going around social media that something was coming. There was going to be a big announcement later today or later that day. Right. And sure enough, we got a whole slew of books that were announced. And this is very typical. We got this with the last two movies, and including even Rogue One and Solo. They did the same thing. So there are a number of books on here, and we probably are not going to touch on all of them. Well, we're not, because we don't have the time. But what were some of the ones that were standouts for you, things that you're definitely going to be putting on your pick list?
I think the ones that we gravitate to most often are going to be the art books, right? And it's the visual dictionary. I think we're going to get another visual dictionary.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so those are the ones that always give us this behind the scenes type of look into the movie and the concept art. And those are always what kind of get us going the most, I think. And those are the ones of this slate. I think those are the ones I'm gravitating a little bit more towards. There's a pop-up book, which is really weird to say that that's interesting, but I have an earlier Star Wars pop-up book. It's actually pretty well done. It's kind of
me
fun.
Too. Mine's from like circa 83, but yeah.
Well, yeah, mine's not that far back. Mine's probably just from a handful of years ago, but it's a lot of fun. And so I'm glad they did this, because I think those are great to introduce to kids and kind of have a family type of book. They're massive though. They're roughly, 5 or 6 inches thick, something like that. So they tend to be big, but the art book, and of course the cover art for the art book is what everyone's a buzz about, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, let's just jump to that one. The cover art is very unique. It gave us this picture of basically Rey and Kylo exchanging or clashing swords over a pond of water or liquid of some sort. And there's a mirrored reflection there, which kind of plays to this whole concept that they are, a mirror images of each other, light and dark, that kind of thing. And it all plays well with everything that we've gotten up until this point, but it set the internet ablaze. People were just falling over by the wayside after seeing this. And so pretty neat stuff, man.
It was kind of fun though, right? Because we had people turning the image sideways and superimposing the rebel signal over it and all sorts of other things that made it a pretty interesting experience. We haven't done that since the Last Jedi posters, I think. So this was kind of cool to relive some of that fun.
Yeah, I posted on our Instagram. I flipped it. flip the image upside down because I wanted to see what it looked like without having to turn my head. It's actually kind of neat the other way around too. So
we did have one other piece of news though before we move into the questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess this is kind of the big one, right? Is there was a schedule of movies for the Disney slate for the next few years, and front and center, starting in 2022, was a new series of Star Wars movies. Some people are calling it a trilogy. I used some finger quotes when I said that. Right. We don't really know. There's nothing about this, but it does start in December 2022, and it's an every other year thing. And they did announce that there's 3 of them. I say announced, they just released a schedule. There's a little fanfare with these types of things. But what do you think about that? What any speculation as to which movies we're going to get? Because there's a handful we could choose from here.
Yeah, there are. And we actually have a question on this. I'm not sure if you've scrolled down on some of the, somebody was asking the question about what do we think these movies are going to be. But I think we can probably knock some of that out now. One of the interesting thing to note is in the years that we don't have a Star Wars film, we're getting a Avatar film, which is kind of interesting. So anyways, but in terms of what this is, it could be a couple different things. It could be 3 movies that are part of the Rian Johnson trilogy. They could be 3 movies from the, what are their names?
Benioff and Weiss,
right? The Game of Thrones folks. Right. So it could be one of theirs. It could be one movie from Johnson's trilogy with 2 other movies that could be standalones. I mean, there's really no way to exactly know what these movies are going to be. My logic would tell me that these are my hunch is that they're the Johnson movies because those were announced even before The Last Jedi was even out. Remember? We hadn't even seen The Last Jedi. They made the announcement that these movies were ready to go and have been greenlit. So if, and that's not to say they couldn't just shuffle things around, but if you take it in order of which they were announced, then the logical thing would be Rian Johnson, but who knows really? There wasn't a lot. Like to your point, it was literally just here are these movies that are coming out, no additional context, no other type of background into what or possibly these will be. But my guess is we should know here pretty soon. I would say by year's end, we'll have a better understanding of what maybe that first movie is going to be, or at least the first trilogy is going to be if they decide to release them as a trilogy.
I really expected this to be a Celebration 2020 type of announcement where we got a better, clearer picture. So this was a little surprising in that regard. But this is also this is what Disney and Marvel and all these guys have been doing for a while now. So it shouldn't be that surprising. My money, I think, is going to be on the Game of Thrones guys. I mean, they are just on fire with the show. The last season is here. Their schedules have freed up, presumably. Yep. And I can see where Lucasfilm and Disney are ready to start a new chapter of something new and a little bit different, a little different take on that. And that's nothing against Rian Johnson. I think whatever he would come up with would probably be pretty interesting as well. But I think this is another opportunity to capitalize on 2 guys that are just on fire with what they're doing with Game of Thrones.
Yeah. The other thing that happens with these movie companies is from a strategic standpoint, they kind of put these stakes in the ground just to, they're almost kind of like pounding their chest saying, we're claiming this date and we're claiming you, right? So they're basically sending these messages and Disney is pretty much saying we own the next 5 years, but they're putting these stakes in the ground and telling the other companies, directors, don't come into this time because you don't want to mess with this kind of thing.
We dare you to come into December now.
Yeah, we own December. And
another fun one, Indy 5, July 2021. So I know we're both huge Indiana Jones fans.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that's really cool that they actually put a date to it because it had gone relatively silent. This was a movie that's supposed to be released a couple of years ago, I think already, or this year or something. And to have an actual tentative date here is pretty interesting.
I'm going to be old.
That's the part that's starting to, like, when I look at this slate, I'm like, oh my goodness, how old am I going to be when these finish?
Oh yeah.
And there's going to be a day where we're not going to see the end of the Star Wars.
I'll be dead.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, back to more positive things.
What were we talking about? Is that it?
I think that's about it. Let's get into some questions.
Yeah,
here.
Let's get to questions. There were some other novels. We'll talk about those later. And we're not dismissing them. They're full adult novels, that kind of thing, but we'll come back to those another time. So, all right, we've got a lot of questions here. We're probably not going to spend a whole lot of time on these questions just because there's a ton of them. Let's start with as usual, our Patreon members. So thank you all of our Patreon folks for contributing each month, keeping the show going, keeping the lights on kind of thing. So first up, for Malice, have there ever been female Sith? Siths. I don't know why I have a list there. Siths. It seems like all have been male so far. The closest would be Asajj Ventress. Could this possibly be an underlying theme in Star Wars that females are typically with the light and males are with the dark?
So the short answer is yes, there have been, but they've been in Legends. I don't think we have any in canon right now, but we had Darth Talon was a really popular one in the Old Republic days.
Oh, yeah.
And very scantily clad, which I think
she
in
hooked
these
up
days...
with Cade Skywalker. It was...
Well, that was in the Legacy series, I thought.
Yeah, it was. It was in Legacy.
Yeah. Anyway, and then there was another one in the Darth Bane novels, which was really good, and that was Darth Zana, I believe, or she started off as Rain. And that was another good one. I'm hoping is an opportunity maybe to bring it in because the Bane stories were pretty solid. The first book in particular was really good. But really, that's it. So, but is there an underlying theme of female versus male and light and dark? I don't think so. I think this is just the legacy of the stories that we have tend to be that way. And we've really not flirted with the Sith too much outside of the primary Skywalker saga. And so I think that's just where we're at. Now we'll have to see what subsequent trilogies look like.
Yeah.
But I think for the time being, I don't think there's a line there at all. I think that's just what we've inherited and what we've done for a while.
Yeah. I imagine at some point that's probably going to change, much like we saw with the Marvel movies, and most of those heroes were male, and now we've got a ton of female heroes that are out. So I want to give a quick shout out to Valen from SWOTOR. Thank you very much. Also, Mara Jade, Emperor's Hand. I don't know if she'd be considered a Sith.
Yeah, and even with Ventress, I mean, they were dark and then they turned light. Or in Ventress,
she was more an assassin, though, right? I mean, that was her.
And someone who kind of lost her way type of thing. It was more of an Anakin type of story of sorts, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll have to see what the future holds. I'm all for a female villain. I think that would be really cool and a totally different dynamic.
Yeah.
All right, let's do Yakko. Thanks, Twan. Yakko, so Jeremy, another Patreon, fantastic friend from Transmissions. Do you think that Disney puts the 21st Century Fox logo in fanfare before Episode 9 as a nice nod to the series' origin? The merger should be finalized well before the movie is released.
I mean, personally, as much as I'd like to see that, I think the days of seeing that logo are pretty much going to be long gone. I don't see them doing it. What's crazy though is, like, even when I think about like the Walt Disney Pictures logo, that's changed over time. And
right.
So I think it's just natural for them to want to mature that and continue to develop it and change it over time so it doesn't become stale, that kind of thing. So it would be as though it would be a cool nod. But again, even just like that Walt Disney logo, I remember when that thing was 2D and then it was 3D. It was like a modest 3D kind of castle. And then they changed it to like this 3D full background environment thing, like in the late 90s or maybe early 2000s or something. And then even just recently in the last like 5 years, they've taken that exact scene, but now they've just thrown these like incredible CGI behind it where it's hard to differentiate between whether that's even real or not at this point. So so all that to say is that I think they're going to they're moving forward, and they own it. They want to brand it as such, and I think they're going to keep that way. All right.
Yeah, and then real quick, really the Fox stuff was really a distribution type of thing. So just legally and what they're doing and why they would do it, I think the opportunity is not really there, and I think they've moved past it. It's
going to be weird not to hear that fanfare, though.
People would go nuts if it happened, though. I will say that, and it would be a nice nostalgic aspect. So I'm not discounting it. I just don't think it's realistic either.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Thanks,
yep. Next up, Utini. What is your favorite personal headcanon? Mine is that Star Wars is real. That's not me. That's Utini's.
That's Utini's.
Yeah.
I think mine is that the Force actually works when I try to open a door at the store or going into a business or something with the automatic doors.
Yeah. Garage door.
Well, yeah. Well, I guess that's true too. Just like you go into a Best Buy, and your kid believes it for a while. And then now when you do it, they just roll their eyes at you.
Yeah.
But I think that's always been my favorite one.
Dad. I have one. The legendary Luke Skywalker has begun a new breed of Jedi. Together with his wife, they have given birth to a small child identified as being extremely powerful in the Force. For plans yet to be revealed, Snoke has set out to turn both Ben Solo and Luke's daughter to the dark side and use them as tools in his galactic conquest. After courting and turning Ben Solo, the now Kylo Ren and the Knights of Ren turned on Skywalker, bringing down his new Jedi Order and slaying one of their most gifted students, Luke Skywalker's wife. To ensure balance remains in the Force, a lost and hollow Luke Skywalker leaves his daughter on a remote desert planet under the watch and care of a complete stranger. He then places himself in exile on the island of Ahch-To. unaware that in just a few short years, the custodians of his child would give her up for sale, leave the planet, and abandon the poor child forever.
Directed by Albert Padilla.
I wrote this. So I wrote that. I'm so glad this question was asked. That was written like, well, I don't even know. It was like when The Force Awakens, right before The Force Awakens came out. I was doing really nerdy things and had dug this up. It took me forever because I had to go find it. It was on a USB stick that I had written this at the time.
I was about to say, where are you publishing your fanfic?
My fanfic? Yeah. I'll never tell. But anyways, that's mine.
All right, let's do another one for Moutini. How about that? Since he's been with us for so long. When Momin was introduced, it kind of changed how we viewed the Sith immortality. Do you think this was intentional as a way to open fandom up to different ways Palpatine could be alive?
So I think the quick answer, the quick answer for me is it's almost like this chicken and egg scenario. And by the way, the egg came first. That's been scientifically proven. But I wonder, I've wondered about this quite a bit because if I'm willing to give Lucasfilm Story Group credit for it, but I think the idea of Palpatine being, quote, alive came first. And I say that because just even recently, Kathleen Kennedy was saying that this was always JJ's endgame. Right, that they had concocted this idea that Palpatine would come back, and we'll talk. There's another question that specifically questions it a little bit later that we'll talk about what this really means. So that was all well in motion before we got Momin and in Charles Soule's kind of thing. So the other part of this is, I still don't. We can talk about this a little bit later, or we can talk about it now. But the whole idea about whether or not the Sith can actually become Force ghosts. I still don't think that's even possible. And I think we're probably going to get a different flavor of what it means to be, quote, alive, to go back to the question itself with Palpatine. But again, short answer is I think this, I don't think Momin spurred it. I think it was something before that. Now they may just be running with this and being given more freedom to kind of take and pick and choose and start fleshing out different stories with what it means to be alive or dead, especially when it comes to Sith, now that they've opened this little, floodgate or Pandora's box, however you want to look at it.
And that's how I look at it. That last part there is that these concepts of them surviving in some way, whether it's through transferring your essence or these other types of ways, have existed for legends, decades kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's a next evolution, but was it set up to set up Palpatine specifically? No, I think it was worked in there in order to support the idea and to give us different ways of viewing how the Sith could retain some sort of presence. But again, these are pretty specific circumstances in this case, at least. And we can talk about Darth Bane and Clone Wars another time if we want. Yep. But I think for this is also there's a major event that happens in order for this type of scenario to even be possible. But this is more by accident than by a true spiritual transition, like we've talked about with the Jedi. But it's an interesting concept, but did they do it intentionally to set all this up? I'm not willing to go that far with the novels and the comics. Some other people are. They think it's kind of a responsibility to tie it all together like that. I just don't see it that direct, I think, is kind of my take on it.
Yeah, I'm with you. He's got another one here too.
He does, man. He loves questions. He's such a great question asker.
I'll give you this one. Calling Galaxy's Edge canon seems like a flimsy proposition. Can we just call it canon adjacent? Is it more accurate? Or I'm sorry, he's saying it's more accurate. Sorry.
Right. So two things. I think one, the books, you pretty much have to call them canon because that's how they're positioning them and that's how they're doing the storytelling. So I think from a book perspective, they're canon. Now from a park, and what they do in the parks and the stories they tell in the park and all of that, 100% agree. That's really kind of operating in this very loose, this is like Lego Freemakers to me, right? You have concepts you can pull, maybe the characters, you establish that they're in a place or they're alive or they're part of the canon in general, but it's not real, right? But the books, I think we have to treat as canon because that's how they're positioning them and that's how they're telling us they are. So that's kind of how I view that one.
Yeah. I don't disagree with anything there. I'm in alignment.
We are aligned.
We are aligned. All right. I'll give you the next one from Stephanie too.
Okay.
Who is your all-time favorite character and why?
Oh boy. I think it's still got to be Luke Skywalker. I mean, this is what it seems like every boy in our generation wanted to be Luke Skywalker. The first time he ignited the green lightsaber, flying the X-Wings, just the story, the arc that he goes through. He's just the quintessential hero for our generation. And quite honestly, just the concepts that he had, the black outfit, and is he good? Is he bad? And the thing with Darth Vader. It's just, for me, it always comes back to Luke, because that was how we got introduced into Star Wars. How about you?
Yeah. Well, if you've listened to the show, it's no surprise.
Aside from Maz.
Yeah, it's Maz. No, if you've listened to the show, then you probably know it's Luke Skywalker. I mean, he was my childhood superhero friend, idol growing up. Yeah, definitely a character that I, aspired to be. He was even just the character before he became the Jedi. Just felt like he was a good person. He wasn't perfect, right? He had his flaws, but you could tell he was striving to be as good as he possibly could. And his decisions were all kind of always guided by love and family, which I think was really cool. And then also, as a kid, Mark Hamill and Luke Skywalker were pretty much, one and the same person as far as I was concerned. And you can only imagine, in my childhood, when I found out, I don't remember when it was, but at some point in my childhood early on, I found out that I shared the same birthday as Mark Hamill, September 25th. And if that wasn't enough, my youngest son is named Luke. I named him after Luke Skywalker.
That sounds intentional.
Yeah, that says intentional. And if that's not a mark of fandom, then I don't know what is. Giving your child that name, but yeah, it's Luke.
So let's do another one from Stephanie then.
Yeah,
and this is right up your alley too. Do you think Palpatine is really Anakin's father? And if so, why didn't he create a lot of Force-made babies, or did he? Was Anakin the only successful attempt?
Well, we don't. So
you want to bring out that fanfic again?
Yeah. Let me search for my fanfic. I wrote one. Oh, here it is. Yeah, I don't know, man. He probably seeded a lot of things. Who knows? We actually don't know. We don't know that he did anything. We have no reason to believe that he did any more than what he did in the Plagueis novel. In terms of whether he's Anakin's father, geez, this is such a hard question, because I go back and forth on this, to be quite candid and honest.
This is like really, what do you believe, right?
Yeah. Man, this question is so polarizing too. So, all right. So for the record, I'm going to say yes, I do believe he is the father, and I'm using quotes though, okay? I believe he's the father of Anakin Skywalker. And to be clear, I believe Anakin was conceived by the will of the Force. And while Palpatine and Plagueis were attempting to create this ultimate dark side apprentice, whatever, I think that's when it occurred. Now, do I think he shares DNA or somehow has Palpatine's bad blood in him? No, I don't believe there's like a physical connection there in any way. Anakin was just simply a boy like any other boy, and who just happened to be extremely powerful, went through a lot of crap in his life. You throw all that into the blender of, how he was brought up in the Jedi Order and slavery and everything else, and it was just a recipe for disaster waiting to happen. So I do want to call out one other thing too, and it's not canon, but you go out there, you can look. There are a number of reports that had the original piece of Revenge of the Sith, where Palpatine is talking to Anakin, and you can chalk this up to Palpatine just continuing to manipulate him. But there's a scene in there where he basically tells him, "I am your father," kind of thing, and Anakin replies back, "I don't believe you." And then Palpatine says, but you know it's true. When you clear your mind, you will sense the truth. You could almost think of me as your father. And that was cut out, right? That was one of George Lucas's original pieces in there. It was all pulled out at the very end, and we never got it, never saw it, was never filmed. But I think in George's mind, in some way, whether physically, metaphysically, spiritually, through the Force, whatever, I think in George Lucas's mind, I think he really did what he was kind of clinging to, this concept that he was, quote, a father of Anakin. But anyways, that's my answer.
Yeah, it's tough. And like I said, this is really just what you believe and what you've seen. And the comic just kind of stirred this back up, right? We had the image of Palpatine, and you had this symbol or this swirly thing around Padme's belly while she was pregnant, which just adds flames to the fire. And I know Mike is saying, stop even talking about this. Anakin and Palpatine are not related. But yeah. I'm going to go with that route with Mike. I think he was conceived by the Force for a purpose. But I do believe that Palpatine was there from the very, very early stages in order trying to influence it, and that Palpatine recognized what happened or felt a disturbance or something along those lines to where he knew this nexus or this, whatever this point was with this kid, that this scenario was it. I'm wishy-washy though, because there are some days where I really like the idea that he and Plagueis somehow were successful. Mm-hmm. And they were never able to quite replicate this because there were the right set of circumstances that finally all aligned. Yeah. I think that's an interesting, fun story. But I think from the narrative perspective, I don't know that that's the kind of the overall direction we ended up of where we need to be with the story overall.
No, I agree. Like I said, I go back and forth myself. That's why I didn't want to answer this. So thanks, Stephanie. No, I'm kidding. But you guys can decide on your own too. I'm sure everybody's got a lot of different opinions about this. And we'll continue to have different opinions until we get a conclusive answer, which I don't think we will ever get, to be honest. So
nope.
All right. Thank you so much. And then Uthal from our Patreon group, would it honor Luke and Anakin's legacy if they started a new following in the Skywalker name? Or does it give Luke too much ownership of the Force, as Luke said it belongs to no one in The Last Jedi?
I think if they did, this would be very much an honoring of the spirit of the Skywalker name about what they, and I think more Luke than Anakin, I think. Well, I don't know. It kind of depends. It could work both ways. It just depends on how they move it forward and how they explain how that's relevant.
Yeah.
How does the Skywalker name fit into a more idealistic way of either the representation of the Force or the representation of the Jedi, or what they should have been all along or what they are now. And I don't think it could honor them. I think that would be an interesting point. But I do tend to agree with where the question was going in the end. I think that's a little bit too much ownership on one person to say that this lineage, this line is basically the epitome of the Force. And I think it does put too much emphasis on a singular family in that regard. Although you could somewhat argue that's the whole point.
True.
What about you?
Oh, me? Great question. Next question. No, I think no, I don't know that I have anything else to add. I think it would be too personal if they gave him that much credit, and that's coming from a diehard Luke fan. If the question then becomes what or who the title is referring to, my best and crazy theory guess is that it's the rise of Anakin Skywalker, risen as the chosen one to ensure balance in the Force remains. So I guess like we've been saying, I think we said this right after in our very first reaction show, just minutes after seeing or coming off that panel, that you almost can't have Palpatine without Anakin Skywalker. So. But I mean, I don't know. I got even more theories around that, so don't hold me to that one. Got plenty more crappy ones.
All right, one last Patreon question from Jeff or JW Englehart from Discord, and pretty fitting given the news about Peter Mayhew. What is your favorite Chewbacca moment?
Wow, there are a lot of them too. I'm going to be honest, like one of the moments where I just felt like I was cheering for Chewbacca and was like, yeah, get him. That was in The Force Awakens, right after he goes ape, after he, Kylo Ren runs his saber through old dad there, and he goes and starts shooting everybody, shoots Kylo and then shoots everybody else and then blows up the whole thing and takes it all down himself. I don't know. That was just a kind of really heroic moment for me for Chewbacca, but there are a lot of them. And I think we'll probably get into and dig into a lot of this with the Peter Mayhew show that we do, or at least the Peter Mayhew / Chewbacca show that we do. But that one stands out just off the top of my head.
One of my favorites is in Empire, actually, when Han's about to get thrown into the carbonite pit. And it's the whole scene, I think, in general, but seeing him lash out and then also recognizing what Leia needs and his place in it all. And it shows you the passion of Chewbacca, but also the caring and the sense of responsibility and the loyalty to Han as well.
To rein it in like that. Okay, let's go to Discord. Adamus, what is the explanation or canon reason behind hyperspace warfare? If we can warp through a ship to destroy it, why didn't we do that to the Death Star?
Well, that's not a loaded question at all.
I know. And I think we've covered this in the Last Jedi episodes that we did. In fact, I think we covered it probably twice, if I recall. But
a bit. And I don't think the Death Star is the same thing as the Star Destroyer. And
true.
I don't know what the effect would be. I imagine it would be pretty devastating, but I don't know if it would have necessarily. I mean, you got to do a lot of things exactly right to go right through the core of it, and not be deviated. So we can argue the narrative perspective of it. We know the reality of why they didn't do this, right? Because it's a relatively new concept for the movies to explore.
Yeah, and I think in the Last Jedi stuff that we did, I think we said it's not a feat that just anyone can pull off. Right? It takes incredible timing. You're probably looking at a 1 in a million chance of like actually pulling this thing off. And I think that was the whole point, is that somebody like Holdo took a chance. Maybe you could say the Force guided her, or maybe you chalk it up just to her ability to be able to fly. Maybe she's just that good of a pilot and was able to do this. And the other thing is, they're rebels. They're resistance warriors. They're not kamikazes. They're not suicidal. There's a whole level. There's a set of culture that needs to exist, almost a mindset, if you will, that needs to exist in order for you to cross the line between, we're in this war, we're going to fight it. No one is left behind, as opposed to, we're all just going to give ourselves up, give our bodies up freely and sacrifice ourselves for the greater good. It's just a different kind of mindset. And I don't think the rebels are there. I don't think the resistance is there. And I think you had this one person who had it because it was really their only option at that time that would bring them to them. It's a one-time occurrence. It's just not part of their mantra. It's not part of their MO. It's not what they do, I guess.
Thanks, Thomas. Yeah, Archangel, this is a bit of a long one, so stick with this. Is Kylo Ren the Anakin that we had hoped to see in the prequel trilogy? I feel like Kylo channels his emotions in the way that Anakin never understood how to, or rather wasn't allowed to. Granted, they have very different personalities and motivations when you compare them. For example, Anakin tries so hard to be good, but is corrupted with darkness, whereas Kylo tries so hard to be evil, but is guilted with goodness. But looking strictly at emotions and the way that these characters respond to the events around them, I feel like Anakin would have behaved very much like Kylo if the Jedi allowed it. Would that make either Anakin or Kylo more or less interesting as characters?
So the question is around, is Kylo Ren the Anakin we had hoped to see? I get where he's going. Yeah. Is he the Anakin? I don't know. I would say just no on the surface. And we could probably do a whole show on this, to be honest.
Right.
But I would say just quickly on the surface, I don't think he is who we hope to see in the prequel trilogy. I think they're very different characters. I think they're different in terms of, their backgrounds, where they're coming from, the things that they've been through. I mean, there's definitely parallels and all that. I'm not dismissing any of that. But I would say just, again, quickly and on the surface, I would say no. The second part, would that make either Anakin or Kylo more or less interesting as characters? I don't think so. I think you still give them credit for who they are and what they've been through, what they're going to go through. But that's just kind of my initial thoughts. What about you?
Right. I like the dichotomy between Anakin and Kylo that we have. The story of Anakin Skywalker is really the fall of him, and Kylo is looking to be the upswing of that, or maybe the potential redemption of Kylo Ren or of Ben Solo, right? At least that's some people's speculation. But is he the Anakin we want? I think the Anakin we got was the Anakin we expected to see, right? We expected to see a tragic end to a character who desperately wanted to do good, but was just so frustrated with everything around him and wasn't really allowed to do or to be what he felt needed to be, and got corrupted by that, those views of the world. And Kylo's story is very different. And so I think they both have their own interesting takes as characters, and quite honestly, I like that they're both kind of unique in that regard. And if they're this opposite side of the same coin, then that might be okay if we can get the right story involved to bridge the characters in that way.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Archangel. Star-Lord, use one word to describe each Star Wars movie. We'll see you in 20 minutes.
All right. So I guess I didn't do, so I wrote these down because I wanted to. The Phantom Menace, I have Maul. Attack of the Clones. I didn't put a lot of thought into this. I really try to just give, like, what's the first word you think of, right? Attack of the Clones, sand. Revenge of the Sith, Vader. And A New Hope, hope. The Empire Strikes Back, Father. Return of the Jedi, Son. The Force Awakens, Rey. I had Han as a close second. I don't know why, but Rey. The Last Jedi, Kylo. And the Rise of Skywalker was Palpatine. That was the first thing that comes to mind when I thought of it. Now, For, let me just do the other ones. Rogue One, Stardust. That always, I don't know why, that just always stuck with me and resonated with me ever since I saw it. And then for Solo, Lando.
That's a good one.
I don't know why, but yeah, that was literally like right on the moment that I did that.
Well, I'm going to do this on the moment because I didn't take notes for that question.
All right, I'll give them to you. The Phantom Menace.
Anakin.
Attack of the Clones.
Clones.
I knew you were going to say that. Revenge of the Sith.
What's the word I would describe it? Duel.
High Ground. Oh, sorry, Duel. A New Hope.
Red 5.
The Empire Strikes Back.
Dagobah.
Return of the Jedi.
Sacrifice.
Ooh, deep. The Force Awakens.
Yeah, I think I was going to go Rey. I was trying to think of something else, but Rey.
The Last Jedi.
Snoke, actually.
The Rise of Skywalker.
Palpatine. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Solo. Star Wars story.
Yeah, actually, Beckett is the first one that came to mind.
Interesting. Rogue One.
Shore Troopers. Love you, Mike.
You and Mike. Get out of here. You're just
Brown nosing.
placating to our producer. Get out of
Actually,
here.
no, it would have been Death Star.
No.
That's 2 words, but yeah, whatever.
That was fun.
Yeah, that was kind of cool.
Yeah. Thanks, Star-Lord.
Yeah, let's not do any psychology
We're not
analysis.
going to explain these at all. Yeah. All right. I Am Woot says the new parts of the prophecy are one in Master and Apprentice. Let me read this one. The new parts of the prophecy of the one in Master and Apprentice give to some interesting interpretation. Specifically the part about when the light is lost, the apprentice shall bring back the master who cheated death. I read this as Plagueis. Thoughts? Have you read it? All right, so let's pause here. Do you want to answer this, or do we want to say I Am Woot? We're going to cover this in Master and Apprentice next week.
Yeah, next week we are going to look at the prophecies and the story of Master and Apprentice. So I don't want to get too much into this, but yeah, we're going to touch this next week, I Am Woot. So I hope you'll stick with us for that one.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair because there's so much to unpack in the prophecies alone.
But I tell you what we'll do. We'll give them a bonus question, and this is going to be for you because it's right in your wheelhouse again. All right. With all the hints at an Old Republic trilogy, what do you think should be, or who do you think should be the main character? Revan or someone from SWTOR?
So as much as I would like a Revan story, I just can't see them going there. I don't think they're going to do it. I think if they go and start trying to put in all of the main characters from SWTOR or the Old Republic, I think they're going to feel hamstrung because of all the legacy stuff and all the legend stuff that's out there. So I can't see them doing that. So, and to be honest, as much, and Jonesy, you've seen my little collection of the Old Republic stuff. So as much as this hurts to say, I'm almost thinking they need to start with a clean slate. I'm not saying they would throw away everything. I think there's tons of stuff that they can build upon, and we're seeing it already. We're hearing it already, especially in Dooku Lost Jedi, which is starting to get up there for me in terms of liking because of the number of references they're dropping to Legend stuff and Old Republic stuff. But anyways, I think there's a lot of material that they can use, but I would almost like to see a kind of a clean slate in some regards, and I would like to see new characters that they bring forth and allow them to kind of play in that space and play in that little world, a little skeleton of a world that they've already created with the Old Republic. So that's my answer.
Yeah, that's a good one. And I get that. I still can't help but want to see Revan on screen though, because it is a pretty good story. And I think there's other characters in there that you could draw from, but I think Revan is a compelling one. I think another character, if you're just looking at legends that are before the era that we're accustomed to, I think Bane is another interesting one. If you want to pull from characters that already exist in Legends, I think Bane is
in canon.
Well, yeah, I mean he's the originator of the Rule of Two, right? And like we talked about with Twan's question earlier with Darzana, there's some story elements there that you can really start to bring in and bring in new audiences as well. So I think that's an interesting take on it. But yeah, personally, I would love to see Revan, because there's a lot of good story there and a lot of good characters that interact with that in a time of of the Jedi in their heyday as well, and the reemergence of the Sith. Yeah,
and I think Revan and Bane are probably two that are just probably the most accessible, because
that's
even
a good way to put it.
You know what I mean? Even like just the storylines themselves, but even the characters have been out there. Like I said, Bane has been introduced in the Clone Wars. Revan, although he's never been really mentioned, there are a lot of people that are just kind of casual Star Wars fans that actually have heard of him. They may not know all the details and may have never played the games or read the book or any of that stuff, but they kind of have a loose concept or a loose idea. He's actually probably a character they would recognize. He's got a very distinct look, and I would expect that they were to bring him back, they would try to keep that look and pay homage to that look because it's very unique. But yeah, I think those are probably the more accessible ones. Before you get into beyond that, you really get into the weeds of very small select group of people that have kept up with that stuff or read it and liked it, committed it to memory. That kind of wrote fanfic on it. Not me, just saying.
Well, hey, let's go back into fanfic then with Dev Saboir's next question. What is the purpose of the metal skirt tube Padme gives birth in?
So I always took this as a privacy skirt, like they just put it up for privacy's sake and kind of cover it more than anything else. And I never gave it a second thought. And then when this question was posed, I went back and I was like, well, let me just go look, because I kind of had it in my head what I remember seeing, and I've only seen this movie a billion times, but I went back and looked at it, and it bothers me now. Like, having been involved in like a lot of hospital births, because I have a lot of freaking kids, like they've done this horribly wrong. Like, her legs are not positioned the right way. Like, it almost looks like they're trying, I don't know what she's doing really, passing a kidney stone or something else, but she's not. Her legs are not high enough and back enough in order to deliver a birth. So I don't know what this was for, to be honest. I can tell you firsthand. I was there, like a lot of men are, during the birth of your children, and I've never seen anything like that. In fact, I even looked at some pictures. Sorry, I don't get too gruesome here.
Oh,
but I'm not going to. I'm not getting into details. But there was nothing covering my wife at all when she was giving birth to 3 of the children. So it was just, me standing there, and she's birthing, and I'm eating a sandwich. So what are your ideas?
I don't think I can follow that up. I got to be perfectly honest with you. We have blazed a new trail on the Cantina Cast, and we might have to shut the show down.
I ate a sandwich one time while my wife was birthing a child. I'm not even kidding.
Oh my goodness. Next question.
So movie magic. We'll chalk that up to movie magic. Thank
movie
you,
magic. There we go.
Yeah.
It's a galaxy far, far away. It kept her warm. Ish.
All right. So next question is from Darth Megatron. I know you guys don't talk about collecting on the podcast, but I was just wondering, what do you guys think about the retro collection coming out soon, and if it's something you would be interested in?
All right. Well, 3 things on this one. 1, coolest name in Discord, Darth Megatron, first of all. Second of all, I'm actually into collecting. I just don't do it as often as I wish I did, for a couple of different reasons. But to answer your question more directly, the retro figures are pretty cool. The only thing that I wish were a little different, and I don't know if this is just the advertising package or if this is actually real, but on the front of the package, they actually say retro, like stamped right on there. Yeah. And I don't know if I like that. That kind of takes it away from it, because I get it. It's already retro. I don't need you to tell me. But I like the packaging. I think they look cool. And I think it's neat to have this stuff resurface, like a very true vintage line. And the 3 3/4 figures, we had vintage lines back when the prequel trilogy were out in the early 2000s. And I really liked those figures. That was one of my favorite lines. Actually, I think Kat and I were talking about it recently. So I'm glad that they're actually doing a true vintage line where you actually get the vintage mold too.
Yeah. And I saw when this was announced, there were people out there that were like really upset about the fact that they were releasing these. And in fact, I saw one person that quoted, and I have the quote here. It says, "Just go buy the originals." Well, no.
Yeah.
I mean, it can't just go right out and buy the originals. And not only that, but if you're like a sales executive at Kenner and you are testing the waters and you throw these things out there and you just want to see if there's a market for them, I mean, you can bet. Well, let me back up. Kenner gets nothing from selling the originals, right? So they're not making any money, and there is a market out there, obviously, for them. So if they throw the line in the water and they get a bite on this, you can bet they're probably going to come back and release a Series 2 and Series 3, and I think they're cool too. I mean, I'm kind of like you. I don't collect as much as I used to because now I'm married and have all these crazy kids. But I also don't even have the room to put these things anywhere here at the house. So, but if I didn't have any of those restrictions, I would probably be picking these up because I think they're cool looking. I like the fact that they're retro looking. And as someone who used to have those, it was just, there's just something there about having them again. So I think they're great. More power to them if they release them. So, or as they release them.
One of the hard things to stomach on the figures these days is the price tag with them. Because even when the Galaxy of Adventures figures came out, they're in the little tube. I think those were $10. I mean, it's got a little mini comic stashed in there, I think. Kind of like the old He-Man things. But
Yeah.
it's just this tiny little tube with a really pretty, petite figure. And for $10, and of course, the Black Series and the regular figures are between $15 and $20 normally anyway now. I'm guessing since this is a retro type of line, vintage type of line, it's going to push the wallet closer to that $20 range. And to me, that's the part that's disappointing about this, is that it's becoming so expensive to do that. And if you're a collector, it's getting really expensive to be a collector if you're just a kid to enjoy this stuff. So I think that's the disappointing aspect of it. I hope they can find a way to help get some of the prices down. But that's what you get when you have all these great molds and then all the facial scans, everything else they do that go into it.
Yep.
All right, let's go on to the next question. Thanks, Darth Megatron. All right, so this is from Crowley. Has anyone pointed out the similarity between Obi-Wan fading away instead of getting cut into Obi sushi by Vader and Luke fading away in The Last Jedi? Could it be argued that both did so to help a potential Jedi? Luke was no Jedi yet. If Rey goes full Luke from Return of the Jedi in The Rise of Skywalker, is that argument stronger? Also, who ghosted out better, Obi or Luke? I apologize, I interrupted myself there. Crowley writes really funny stuff I can't say on TV. All right, so yeah, who ghosted out better, Obi-Wan or Luke, amidst all the other questions in there?
So I think, I think Luke probably went out better than Obi-Wan.
Really?
And yeah.
Dude, Obi-Wan smiled and basically force taunted Vader in my headcanon.
I guess, yeah, I can see that. And I would say if that's what you're basing on, then yeah, I would agree. I was just going off of the moment and the way they went out, the drama, I guess, around it more than that. But yeah, you're right. He does kind of give him that sly little "see you later, sucker." But I mean, I don't know. Is it just that moment where he falls apart, or is it the see you around kid and the smirking and him playing Kylo Ren the way he did? I kind of encapsulate all that scene as him going out. But
right.
Yeah. And then, I'm sorry, what was the first part of the question there?
Could it be argued that they both faded away to help a potential Jedi?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think that was the point and the purpose of it all. I hope that's what he was asking for in terms of the question itself. If he's trying to draw some kind of connection into the manner in which they went away, tied directly to the fact that they were helping people, I think it's a really cool, astute observation. I didn't really even consider that. I think about Yoda and the way he went out. I guess it was very similar to Obi-Wan's. And they were all three kind of the same way. But you could make the argument that Yoda was kind of helping someone out. Not really. But he was going on into the Force life, though, right? Into the afterlife. So, but yeah.
Yeah, and it's the story of, Yoda says to Luke in Last Jedi, we are what they grow beyond. I think this is one of those moments where you could apply that to a number of examples. But I think in these, for the master to be present all the time, doesn't necessarily, in these scenarios at least, it seems like there's only so far they can take them. Now, we could argue that both of these were very early in their, call it apprenticeship if you want to. But at some point, you've got to let them go and they have to go and figure things out for themselves. Now, I don't know that it's a great argument, but you could also look at it in that perspective as well.
Yeah,
I think it works still.
Yeah. Let's see. Where are we here? We're at the hotline. Yeah, voicemail. So first one's up from Rot Cod. Says, I have a question for the show. If Palpatine is back or didn't die, does that mean that Anakin did not fulfill the prophecy of destroying the Sith? Does this undo everything about the first 6 movies?
No, I don't think it undoes anything in the 6 movies, and I don't think it means he didn't fulfill the prophecy. I think that's the interesting thing. If we take a step back and look at it from George Lucas' perspective, his trilogy, he did fulfill the prophecy and it was done. Mm-hmm. I think as we move into this, you could say that prophecies don't necessarily have a beginning and an end of sorts. And where we perceive the beginning and end isn't necessarily the reality of it either, right?
Yeah.
We could have a moment where it appears to be the end, but it really has not. And since we don't, and once we see how Rise of Skywalker plays out, if the fan theories play out of Anakin has to come back to help defeat Palpatine as the greatest evil, then you could argue that he is helping fulfill the prophecy, or in some other way he is. Either it's his line, the line of Skywalkers is fulfilling the prophecy. It doesn't necessarily have to be a singular person, I suppose. I think that's always a potential or a possibility.
Yeah. So I'm going to go back to, I'm going to harp on what I had said before, I think, and when we talked about prophecies, or I guess maybe the Chosen One prophecy itself. And I made that whole Matrix scenario, or the Matrix, what do you call it?
Analogy.
Analogy. Thank you. But I'm not going to go that hard on this one, but I just want to say that I think, especially now, having read like Master and Apprentice, and as far I've gotten I'm almost done with Dooku Lost Jedi, or Jedi Lost. There's something about the prophecies there. There's things in both of those that kind of speak to what you just touched on, where the prophecies really don't end. And it's all a matter of relevancy and meaningfulness to whoever it is in that moment. So in other words, this is the Chosen One prophecy, and we're in a very, very small period of time. I know it feels like forever because it's been our life for 40 years, but really when you think about it in the grand scheme of the timeline of Star Wars and how many thousands and eons of years have existed, right? This is a very, very, very tiny, tiny portion that people are hyper-focused on the Chosen One prophecy being here. We don't know how far back the Chosen One prophecy goes. And the point I think I was trying to make, without, again, hitting it too hard, is I think this isn't the last time someone's going to go, we're in the midst of the prophecy. And to that end, I think this, I guess, let me go back to the question. Does this undo everything about the first 6 movies? No, I don't believe it does. Is Anakin still going to be able to fulfill the prophecy, or did he fulfill the prophecy? Yeah, I think he did at the end of Return of the Jedi. But we've got to look at the saga as 9 movies and not 6, right? There's still 3 more movies to go. There are probably things that will happen in this last movie that maybe Anakin would have to come back again. It doesn't mean that he didn't fulfill the prophecy. He did. It's just he's fulfilling it again now, or there was one last chapter to be written, or there was still something that we weren't thinking of, which would still put him in that position to be the Chosen One and to kind of put end this thing all together. So, but yeah, I don't know. And then going back to the Emperor, we probably should save that, but because I really want to do a show just on like life and death and the afterlife and what that means for Sith, Jedi, and everyone else. But
right.
We could spend a whole lot of time talking about whether or not the Emperor is back and how he'll be back should he come back in Episode 9. But,
excellent.
Let's look at Daniel's. This is we copy and paste this right out of the translation from our voice thing. So doesn't really make a lot of sense. But what do y'all think the next saga in Star Wars is going to be after the last movie in the trilogy? Says now that Skywalker's is on the table. I think it's trying to say now that the Skywalker saga is done. Sorry. It says, so nobody's really sure like what exactly is going on. What do y'all think about it? Anyway, thank you. Have a great day.
Daniel doesn't really sound like that.
Yeah,
but
that's a translation.
But to Google he does.
Sorry, Daniel.
Okay. Yeah, I got to figure out what the question was. All right, so what's the next trilogy going to be? Yeah, we've talked about it a few times. I think it really depends on who is on deck for the next, either the next movie or the next trilogy. If it's Rian Johnson, to me, it seems like that might be a little further in the future or around the time, but completely standalone and just a completely different angle with a completely different set of characters, maybe with brief touch points of common places. But if it's Benioff and Weiss, I mean, and this is probably unfair to pin this on them, but an Old Republic type of story, and maybe that's because of Game of Thrones, an Old Republic type of story, or in that general era or that kind of feel, I think that would be really cool and really interesting to go and explore that too.
Yeah.
So those are the two. Now, if it was a one-off, I'm not really sure where I would want them to go. I know where a lot of the public wants them to go, and I think Mike wants them to go in the Obi-Wan direction, right? But I don't know. I'm not really sure which story I want to hear with a one-off shot. Because quite honestly, I'd rather go back to Solo and have more adventures with Solo because I
finish that
was
off.
I was pretty pleased with how that turned out, and just have them be Indiana Jones-ish,
Right. Yeah, and sorry, again, to boil the question down, it's really about where do we think this next trilogy is going to go, and kind of what we were talking about earlier in the show about, we don't really have a whole lot of details, and it could be one of a couple different scenarios and where these three movies lie. But my hope is if it's a Rian Johnson trilogy, I would like to see him. I hadn't really considered the timeline too much, maybe in the future, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. I mean, they could run something in parallel. But as long as I'm hoping that something out in Wild Space or Beyond the Outer Rim, that would be kind of cool, because that would give them a whole, another area of Star Wars universe that has really gone untapped. It would be a nice way to segue Galaxy's Edge into whatever that is, right? So they could kind of go in and out, and Galaxy's Edge kind of be that central focal point for both of these things going on. If they run in parallel, or even if they don't, they would still be able to do that. And I think for the Benioff and Weiss one, like we've said earlier, everyone's speculating that it's Old Republic, and to your point, it's probably not fair, because I think the reason we go there or gravitate there is because we think Old Republic, we think medieval
right,
in Star Wars land, and then immediately takes us to Game of Thrones, and so it seems like that would be the natural fit for them. But who knows? It may not be, and maybe it's Rian Johnson that's got the Old Republic trilogy, and Benioff and Weiss are doing something completely different. So, but I'd rather they go there.
Avatar, Star Wars crossover every other year.
Oh, that's a ludicrous idea, but it just might work.
No, it won't. All right. Last question of the evening. The Dodge Father. I like that too. Do you think we will see any references to Shadows of the Empire in any new content? We saw Shizor in Clone Wars.
Oh, no. I'll make this kind of quick and to the point. I'll just put you out of your misery. I don't think they're going to do that. I think Dash Rengar and Shizor, the Outrider, and whoever else was in that the storyline, I think we're probably past all that. It's not a. I think we've talked about Shadows of the Empire. I think on this show, at least we've touched on it a little bit, but I enjoyed it. It wasn't bad. I never think it was bad. I thought it was great what they were doing. They had the soundtrack, and they had a whole new cast of characters that people weren't familiar. Yeah, they were very similar to a lot of the characters we knew. Yeah, sure, but I didn't mind it so much, and I enjoyed the N64 game. I think that sold $1 billion when that game came out. So it would be nice to kind of see them again. I just don't know that there's a huge nostalgia yearning for the this particular storyline anymore, but I could be wrong.
I think that's probably true, but I don't know. Dash Rendar, I mean, there's no reason why he couldn't surface in something, because he's a pretty, I don't mean this in a negative way, but he's a pretty generic character, right? He's swashbuckling smuggler. We need more of those if for whatever reason in different time periods or in different stories. Is it going to be the same type of characters that we have in the same era and things like that? Maybe not. I liked Shizor, but the problem with Shizor from what we know in Legends is that story arc is just not possible now with Leia. Mm-hmm. It's just not reasonable to go that route. And quite honestly, a character with, what was his superpower? Was pheromones, right?
Yeah.
Is what the Faline can do. I think Faline was the race, right? You're the encyclopedia. Yeah. I have to make sure I'm saying this all right. Yeah. So that was always a draw for that. And I don't know, on screen, that can be somewhat interesting to try to figure out. But again, like with you, I thought the characters were fine. I thought the story, we were begging for story at that time, and to have something, a book and a video game. And I think we even had a CD-ROM companion to it all, right? Something like that.
Yeah, they released that.
Yeah, I mean, to have that at the time was really important to us, and really, I mean, we were craving something like that. So I think we all have very fond memories of that. And it was a solid story. I think if I recall, it was more like a kind of like a BB plus type of story, or how I enjoyed the book. But I think it's possible we could get a few things, but I don't know where they would fit anymore. And I think that's the difficult thing now, is Legends characters fitting in is usually pretty specific now in some sort of era. And I don't know.
Yeah, I think we get him like a name only, or well, I shouldn't say that, but I think that would be an easy way to get it in there, and it's kind of a Easter egg. Hey, look,
right.
Look what we did. We threw them in there, or the names in there, or whatever. But I don't know that they would go back and build new. I think these new people coming in, I think they have new characters and new ideas and things they want to do on their own. They want to, spread their Stretch their legs. Sorry. Oh, well, that one almost went to a bad place. But yeah, they want to stretch their legs and be creative, right, with all their own new characters and ideas and storylines and that kind of thing. So that's the only reason I'm saying
this
that.
evening has already gone in very weird directions already.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's kind of part
already
of the
talked
course.
about labor. So.
All right, so I kind of lied. That wasn't the last question, but it did. The one from social media, RS722 had a very similar type of question. Do you guys see anything that might be pulled from Legends? Maybe The Apprentice, Starkiller, Dash Rendar, anyone like that? Keep up the great work. So thanks for that. And again,
on those.
kind of more of the same. Yeah, exactly what we just talked about.
Luke Hogan. All right, this is your what's the best craft beer in Texas?
That is such a loaded question because usually when people ask that, they already know what their favorite is, and it's
yeah, right.
It's not fair.
There is a lot of wrong answers here, so go right ahead. You're the beer drinker connoisseur.
Well, yeah, I enjoy it. So I'll say this. Here's some that surfaced to the top for me in Texas. What I like. Eighth Wonder, which is a Houston brewery. They have one called Rocket Fuel. It's a Vietnamese coffee porter. I was actually scared to even try it, but it was actually really smooth and really good. So strongly recommend that one. If I like St. Arnold's, which is another Houston brewery, especially their Christmas ale in the winter. And now that we're getting into the summer in Texas, of course, the kind of the easy drinking IPAs are always nice. Deep Ellum up in Dallas has got one called Easy Peasy. And then again here in Houston, No Label Brewery, which is actually just down the road from me here out in Katy in West Houston, has one called Squeeze a Twist. So those are the ones I'd throw out there just to go out there and try. But, to each their own. That's the cool thing about beer. You can find something for everybody, kind of like Star Wars.
Yep. So, and that's the last question. We're going to end on that one. And so we threw that one in there just because it was fun. But I want to make sure that, as the questions come in, they are Star Wars relevant. We want to ensure that continues to stay the same. And if we start getting other questions that are not Star Wars relevant, then I don't know, maybe we'll do those in a Cantina After Dark if that show ever comes back, or a round table, or I don't know. We'll find another way to do those.
I do have to say, though, I have looked for anything to cross-pollinate Star Wars and beer, and I just haven't been able to find it. Of course, Lucas has his own vineyard, the Skywalker brand of wine.
Yeah. The guys at Neozaz do their own beer, and I've seen there's other craft, like really what's smaller than micro breweries.
Yeah, it's basically backyard,
somebody's basement. Yeah, whatever that is. I've seen some of those guys making their own kind of labels and that sort of thing. It seems like there's some out there that are all Star Wars related. I don't know if they're any good, but they pop up on social media, or Instagram wants me to check them out for some reason. But happens quite a bit.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this show.
Thanks for all the questions.
What's that?
Thanks for all the questions. These were great.
Thank you for sending all those questions. There was a lot of them, and we appreciate it very much. We'll do another one here once these start to accumulate and get to the point where we need to get them out. But don't forget to follow us on social media and join us in Discord. Support us via Patreon and through TeePublic, some of the merch that we've got for sale there. And then we are coming back next week. We are going to get into Master and Apprentice. So if you've not had a chance to read that book, highly suggest you do so before that show happens, because we are going to spoil the heck out of that book and get into some nitty-gritty stuff that came out from it. So, all right. With that, anything else before we head out, Jonesy?
Nope. Shout out to Aaron. Thanks for all the support and the kind words on Facebook. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Baker. And thanks to everyone who provided, again, questions, feedback, and continue to support the show. We will see you guys next week.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.